Okay, good morning or good afternoon to everybody who's joining this panel. This is our innovation panel that we're looking at, where we're looking at the future of networks and we're looking at the future of the towerco business model across Asia. So I think it's important to note when we're having this discussion that we're talking here around a diverse set of markets. So we're looking at how the model is going to evolve, maybe in markets that are moving more towards 5G at the moment, but equally it's important that we're looking at maybe some markets where it's more about extending coverage and looking at ways of bringing that rural coverage with new types of business models or new technologies across the board. So I've got some that I'm happy to welcome on the call with us today. And I think, some may be familiar faces to some, others not so much. So I'm just going to ask everybody to go around and start with a little introduction to yourself and also to the company, just so we know who we have here. So Alka, can I start with you, please?
Yes, of course. By both accounts, my name starts with A, so that also gives me an advantage. Hello, everybody. Great to be on the panel, specifically because it's innovation panel, something very close to our heart. And really great to be on this kind of a virtual platform in Tower Exchange. We are so used to coming over to Singapore in December for the event that this feels odd, but I really hope each one of you is well and safe during these tough times globally. Wish you all the best for the family and for yourself to keep good health along with the teams. I'm Alka Asthana and I'm CTO for Bharti Infratel Limited and Indus Towers combined. We merged very recently, 19th November actually, and we are the mobile infrastructure providers pan-India across 22 circles. We have a footprint of 172,000 towers where we share it with all the operators in the country. So we have co-locations which are roughly twice the number of sites. We of course take innovation very seriously, and we are exploring various options of how we can support our customers, which are the mobile operators, in various forms of providing infrastructure which can be shared and which can be therefore put up and maintained with a very high degree of reliability. That's my task. So see you around in the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alka. And then Hussein, over to you, please.
Yeah, I'm Hussein Abdul Khadir. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Asia Consultancy Group in Afghanistan. We are a towerco. We have relatively less number of sites as Alka's. We have over 400 sites, but these are key backbone sites for all the MNOs. We have a tenancy ratio of 3. So all the operators are on us on these backbones. We are the leading towerco in Afghanistan. I don't think there's any other towerco that has the footprint that we have. And yes, we are in an emerging market, and we are more diversifying into the ICT sector than just staying within the towerco space, and that I will explain later in the discussion. And wish you all and your families keep safe.
Thank you, Hussein. Gulfraz, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. My name is Gulfraz Qayyum. I'm a managing director at Citigroup. One of my areas of responsibility is digital infrastructure, where I spend a lot of time in the tower space on a global basis, I would say, providing M&A advisory services to our clients, also capital raising. Delighted to be on this panel.
Thank you. And Chuan Wei, can you introduce yourself as well, please?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lim Chuan Wei. I'm a partner at Analyst Mason. We are a strategy and technology consulting firm in the TMT sector. Been very much involved in the digital infrastructure and the tower space for the last 10, 15 years or so. I myself have 2 roles. One is to lead the transaction support practice to look at tower transactions and investments. The second role is actually working with the industry players, the tower companies, as well as the mobile operators on various issues. So I've been spending quite a bit of time with the industry players to look at new products, new businesses, etc., to see how the companies can look into increasing revenues and also, of course, decreasing costs.
Thank you. Brilliant. So just a kind of quick shout out firstly to everybody who's listening. We do have a chat function. So if you've got questions that you would like to put to the panel, please put those in and I'll try and do my best to get round to them. But I think before we start to speak to Alka and Hussein about some of the specific things that they're working on, I actually thought it'd be quite interesting to maybe start perhaps with you, Gulfraz, first, to maybe look at some of the trends you're seeing. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the Asian market, but looking globally in terms of operators' appetite to, looking at to what extent they are interested in outsourcing different forms of digital infrastructure, and any kind of trends that you've been seeing across the board there that are worth noting for us.
Sure. So look, I can start off with the MNO perspective, and the MNO perspective is a fairly simple one, which is they want to lower the cost of ownership across infrastructure. There's a lot of pressure on operator balance sheets. There's pressure on cash flows. We're in an environment where investors want dividend yield. And so operators are looking right across the cost structure and looking at ways that they can minimize costs, they can minimize CapEx. And tower operators have been a huge friend to the MNOs in that regard. And some of the areas, if I can briefly touch upon them, where we are seeing innovative trends, not just coming out of the tower operators, but this is really a collaboration between tower operators and their clients. At the end of the day, the tower operators are there to provide service and help address the needs of their MNO clients. And really, there's two categories I would point to. So one is if we focus on sort of the core provision of passive infrastructure. We've got, right from low-level innovation, if I can describe it as that, which is sort of engineering solutions on provision of incremental capacity for rooftop towers, through to energy provision. That's a big area of focus. I'm sure my colleagues on the panel will speak more about that. And this is sort of moving on from, sort of energy solutions that we've had in recent times, deep cycle batteries and the like, moving on towards making solar more reliable, a better cost solution. And there's also an ESG benefit in looking at that. We're also in certain markets, particularly in developed markets, Italy is a good example where there's EMF limits, where the tower operators are bringing solutions, particularly around small cells, DAS sites. So that sort of continued innovation on that front. But what's also very interesting is tower operators moving what I would say beyond the core and asking themselves the question and being asked the question, how else can they support the clients? And here, one of the big themes, I'm sure, again, we're going to explore it through this panel, is active sharing. So can the tower operators provide the same sharing benefits and provide low cost of ownership, not just on the passive side, but on the active side? Where do you then draw the boundaries? I think fiber is very much a part of that debate, providing as full a solution as possible. Obviously, small cells, as we move deeper into 5G, are a big area of focus. And then related to that, we've seen a number of towercos that have been moving into what I'll describe as edge computing centers, so mini data centers. And this is again focused around 5G provision. We saw, for example, Cellnex strike a deal with Bouygues in France for 90 edge computing data centers. So this again is sort of catering to that theme. How can the MNO clients be helped, both in terms of reducing the cost, but also current and future CapEx?
Thanks, Gulfraz. I think that sets the scene quite nicely for us in terms of a bit of an overview of the key areas that people are looking at. Alka, can I maybe jump to you here, and just for us to rather than necessarily going into a lot of detail around specific areas as starting point, but maybe just explain to us some of the new service lines or new forms of infrastructure that, or whether they may not necessarily be new now, but things beyond macro towers that are kind of a key focus for Bharti.
Sure, and thanks, Laura, and thanks, Gulfraz. You kind of, put a, let's say, radar around what all is there, in the whole area. What is happening, more importantly, is that there is a need for going deeper into the circuits, into the cities, into the rural areas, and there's this whether electricity is coming first or mobile coverage is coming first kind of race. So that's one area where a lot of innovation is necessary, because you don't have a ready space where you are kind of putting up towers, and there is that challenge of long line of sites and very high towers and electricity shortage, and it hasn't really reached the interiors, but mobile coverage is what is required. So those are some of the tough terrains where we do get in and provide coverage. So that's one area. The other is, of course, as Gulfraz was mentioning, that there is a lot of focus on how we can share the active also. There isn't a ready, let's say, plan of action or synergy which has been derived as yet. These are early days, and we are finding out how it can be put in a meaningful manner, so to speak. And there is an SLA commitment which the operators are happy with in terms of active sharing. It would certainly evolve more with 5G and the densification needs. There is also this requirement of coming out with smart city solutions, and it is really encouraging to see this whole gamut of integration between the telecom and the IT sector, which is going to get more and more insidious as we go deeper into 5G adoption. There's a lot of telecom and IT integration which would be required, and therefore when the towercos look at let's say a horizon which is developing, we need to figure out where we find the space to provide a very neutral kind of hosting capabilities, and that is where the focus of most of us is. As far as structures are concerned, as I said, smart city really involves a lot of aesthetics as well. There is that need to kind of blend into the whole city, and therefore options such as camouflaging, options such as lighter structures, street furniture, and something which is not evident as a telecom tower is something which is very necessary, and we keep developing solutions for those. These are not very large-scale solutions as yet. I mean, they are not rolled out in many cities, but yes, the cities which take up the whole smart city gamut, they do ask for not only smart structures, but also the integration with a command center, which is centralized, and then they want to see the environmental sensors, they want to see the camera feeds, they want to see the the lights which are smart and controlled over IoT. So it's an amalgamation of many streams which were hitherto working in silos, and we are trying to put them together as a plate full of offering, and I'm sure there'll be more and more uptake on these kind of integrated offerings. So I'm very excited for the coming times.
Thanks, Alka. Sean-Wei, I wanted to come to you and actually just on one of the things which I think is going to feature quite heavily in the panel, but around the topic of active sharing. So understanding a little bit of the landscape currently across the Asian market, and to what extent active share agreements are in place through operators, and perhaps are there examples you can look at where towercos are already facilitating some of the active sharing as well?
Okay, with regards to active sharing in Asia Pacific itself, there are a number of markets that do have active sharing. So it will be markets like Australia, Malaysia, and now Indonesia. Indonesia is actually looking quite seriously at active sharing. That's actually one of the things that's been mandated by the new omnibus law that's being implemented in Indonesia. And that's something that will move on, I think, fairly rapidly. With regards to active sharing of for the towercos, there isn't really that much going on yet, but do note that actually there has actually been some active sharing equipment in, for example, the in-building solutions, which is quite adjacent to the towercos in terms of infrastructure, where basically some of the in-building solution providers are actually providing the active equipment and doing the sharing on the spectrum for the mobile operators. And that's something that has already been in place, and that's something that I think will move to the tower market in the near future. So it's been tested, it's been trialed, I would say, and I would say over time there will be more companies that will be interested in doing that, whether it be a towercos or other neutral host providers.
Brilliant. So I'm going to come to you shortly, but I just wanted to go back to Gulfraz, and obviously you've got more of a global outlook, and I think in some regions there, across Europe, for example, there's a lot of active sharing happening at the moment, and you look at Inwit as an example in Italy, and they're sort of managing active sharing on behalf of both Vantage and TIM. And I just wondered if you could maybe offer, if you kind of think the environment that Tronway's described in Asia is similar, or you're actually seeing other markets globally a bit further down the road in terms of more widely having active sharing, and telcos also starting to take that that role in facilitating it, or do we think it's for early days kind of on a global front?
Yeah, so look, I think it's worth drawing a distinction here. So active sharing between the operators is highly prevalent in Europe. For those that participated in the Vantage Towers Capital Markets Day a couple of weeks ago, that was a huge theme in most of Vodafone's markets. That is happening. That is typically seen as not good news for the tower operators because it takes away potential tenancy. Vodafone, projected that in a very different light, which is actually you've got two anchor tenants that are captive on your network, and so you may have much greater utilization of tower services when operators come together in that way. So that we are seeing happening in a fairly major way, in a substantial way, and of course the tower operators have a role to play there because with active sharing, follows decommissioning, and the tower operators, are beginning to develop an expertise in that area to help reduce the costs and bring about the synergies. The other area, which is sort of, a developing theme, I would say, is tower companies stepping into the world of active equipment and permitting the customers to active share. So Hussein will speak more about this in a very real example. But if I was to give you examples in Europe, we don't have much of that yet. One of the challenges, there's a number of challenges, particularly related to spectrum and who owns that spectrum. But a good example is Polkomtel in Poland. So Polkomtel Infrastruktura is a subsidiary which houses not just Polkomtel's passive infrastructure, but also their active infrastructure. And there are rumors that the company is looking to actually sell that entity, right? There are other examples, a couple of notable ones in Africa where rolling out to rural areas is prohibitively expensive for the operators from an economic point of view. And we are seeing specialist entities set up that can then take all of the operators with them into rural areas together. And that obviously lowers the cost of deployment there. So yes, we are seeing towercos take on the baton of enabling active sharing, but that is very much sort of early days for the space there.
So that brings us nicely to you, Hussein, and obviously this is something that you are involved in Afghanistan, so sort of managing the RAN sharing. Can you maybe explain for those who are less familiar with the company exactly what you guys have been doing on that front?
Yeah, thank you for that, and thanks, Gulfraz, for setting up the active sharing landscape. Well, in Afghanistan, ARPUs are low. It's a developing market. It has a lot of big players in there. It's Salat, MTN, Roshan, that of course look at the bottom line. And yeah, going into the rural areas is not profitable. So yeah, with lobbying to the regulator, we managed with, of course, partnering with one of the MNOs because they have the license on the frequency spectrum. We partnered with them where there is a development fund that is then created by the regulator to fund certain construction of sites in rural areas. So we used this fund and bid for it and won the rural coverage sites. But in the same way, these sites are purely owned by us as ACG, where we build the sites, we operate them, and we own the RAN up to the base station controller. And then we leave the CDR processing and billing to the MNO. So it's partly enables kind of an MVNO setup, but it's not really there. I mean, again, it's as Gurfa said, where do we draw the line? And I think what works for us is we leave all the switching and the billing to the MNO, which is their core business, but we just own the RAN and facilitate the frequency hosting on our sites. How does this help us? Incumbently, it was build and they will come. Okay, so we built where the MNOs didn't want to go. I mean, of course, Afghanistan is an interesting landscape to operate in. So we have sites in all the, I would say, interesting areas. And we have our ways of managing those sites through community policing and employing the community to guard the sites. And in that way, we create an ecosystem where they depend on the site for their daily livelihood, okay? So in that sense, we can operate in very, very difficult areas, okay? We own, I would say, majority, 70% of the critical backbones of the 5 major cities in Afghanistan, okay? And it's been going well. We currently have 2 MNOs on most of our sites. So our tenancy ratio on the active sharing is roughly about 1.7, growing to 2. We are looking at bringing in MTN. We have done IoT testing for ZTE and Huawei, which is what Etisalat and Roshan use. And we're bringing in Ericsson. It's already done. IoT testing is done and is ready to launch, but I think they're just waiting for some HQ approval for MTN to come onto our sites. Okay, of course they have seen the value. These sites were at 2G on the time of launch, and we are now already upgraded the 3G to its full capacity. And now on some sites that were considered rural, we're going to 4G. Okay, so it's taken time, yeah, but it's growing. Okay, so yeah, I mean, how did we do this? I guess bottom line is always the main point to address. So as I said, incumbent, we built the sites. They came in with 2G. I think Alka, you'll understand as the CTO. They bring a 2G 900. They bring a 2G 1800. Each of them with their rectifiers. So you'd have one operator having 4 sets of equipment on site. Okay, by the time you have 2 tenants, you're running a 30 kVA site. We have no, I would say, like what you mentioned, is it the electricity or the network coverage that comes first? For us, it's network coverage. There's no electricity. It's only in the major cities. So for us, running a site 24/7 at 30 kVA and at the fuel pricing, it's really, really costly. So we realized if we controlled the equipment on site, that means no need to determine, what space you're putting what operator on, which donut, how much equipment, what footprint on tower, what footprint on the ground, what power consumption. We own the equipment. We just give them the frequency. Of course, depending on the capacity, then on the TRX level, okay, is what we charge, is based on the capacity and the backhaul to the sites. Because the way we started was VSAT, okay, and then as we moved to 3G, we were able to connect to the existing backbones. Okay, so yeah, we have tried to maintain the costs quite low so that we can make the site profitable by having just one set of equipment. Okay. What else have we done? Yeah, of course, we are running these sites on solar hybrid. Okay, very minimal. I think only during winter do we have a few hours where the generator runs because of the light intensity to generate the required power. Apart from that, we looked at other ways to cut costs, and that came towards connectivity. So our innovation was to try and control the equipment on site to reduce the power consumption, to be able to provide a better rental agreement to the MNO. Of course, the only other aspect to this was connectivity. Most of our sites were on VSAT, and we moved them to microwave. And now, being a registered national fiber licensed operator, okay, we are now building fiber across Afghanistan. Okay, not only looking to become the first carrier grade network in the country, but also looking at supporting the MNOs in transmission, which we know is key. So we are also doing metro fiber in the first 5 major cities. This is by demand of the networks, because to run their 4Gs on microwave is what they're doing right now. And I'm sure you understand then what happens to the requirements, but that's what we're doing. Is what is the next level of support does the towerco give would be fiber. And that's what we're in right now. Of course, as I said, we're looking at becoming a registered tier 4 data center shortly. Okay, so that's another way where we're able to host the MNOs in the cities and be able to host their gateways and then streamline how we exit data back and fro through Afghanistan. I think that's it. I mean, one other thing is, on our strategy is I would say most of the founders, most of the C-level are all ex-telco. So we understand how the telco think. So in terms of our pricing, we have looked at maintaining the MNO margin, okay, but still reducing the rentals, reducing the data pricing. So that's how we achieve, I would say, covering the unconnected, okay, at a reasonable pricing in an emerging market. Okay.
Thank you. I think it's a really interesting model. And I mean, Alka, I wanted to come to you just to ask, to what extent has Bharti looked at things, moving further up into the active side of the networks? Is it something that's sort of very much on an innovation front and it's being tested? Is it something you're doing on any kind of larger scale? Is it something that's even in your horizons that you want to be working on, or that the operators have given a sign that they want you to be working on?
So there is, of course, interest and a very keen one at that from the towercos that we get into the active side. But there is a limitation from the regulator also as to who can actually do the active sharing, right? So that's something which is not like completely sorted out in terms of regulations allowing the active sharing. So it would be too early to say that yes, the market is ready and all the solutions are ready. But we are kind of looking at all aspects of how it can really prove like a win-win solution for all. Technically, there isn't a challenge. Obviously, I mean, so many countries in the world, so many markets are already doing it. So it isn't a technical challenge at all, but it is definitely a challenge of all the stakeholders coming together. Yeah, that's one piece. The other piece is that fiber in general is not actually taken as an active sharing at all. So fiber is something which has always been there. It is a passive, at least the dark fiber is completely passive. Even if you do not provide electronics at the end of the fiber, you are still able to share the fiber cable, right? The immense potential of utilizing fiber and sharing fiber is there, inherent. But still, it is some way before we actually get down to having a single cable across the length and breadth of the city. And this I'm talking of intracity. I'm not even talking of intercity or long distance. I'm saying even within a city, it has always been the lookout of the city authorities to say that the city should be dug up once and not repeatedly through several of the authorities or agencies digging again and again to lay down their fiber. But if today, we are providing fiber solutions at certain places, especially the smart cities or the cities where they have put this as a ground rule that it is a one dig policy kind of stuff. But generally, the operators are still going ahead and doing the fiberization. It would make immense sense if last mile fiber is done by the tower companies exclusively, but that stage is yet to come, frankly. And while microwave still is the primary backhaul today, as we move towards 5G, fiber would have to take that primary position, right, of carrying the backhaul. And then the kind of fiberization which would be required, the kind of spread and densification which would be required, we would need neutral players to get into the fiber part. But we don't treat that as an active sharing at all. And it is not, regulator wise or rules wise, it is not in that active sharing as long as it's a dark fiber. We do have license for acting as backhaul providers, as service providers for internet, but that also is to be kind of hand in glove with the overall setup of the site and of the backhaul. So where you are giving up the data is something which is to be kind of very closely worked out between the customers and ourselves. So these are I think the starting points, though it has been there as a as an option for quite some time, but it isn't, and you have to compare it with the size and scale of ours. So 172,000 towers, and if you say how much of kilometers of fiber, no, the percentage wise it's very minuscule. So that's why we don't kind of talk about it as a primary market. But yes, that's where the focus is to kind of explore newer alternatives.
Thanks, Sarka. I've got a couple of things I want to come to before I know we're sort of getting a little bit close to time, but Tranway, one question I had is looking at Open RAN and how that's maybe going to change sort of the shape of networks across Asia. Obviously, we've seen E.co doing some trials on this space, but it's going to open up the market to some different players. What's your view on how Open RAN's being adopted across the region, how that's going to impact the different players who are involved, how significant a role you foresee towercos sort of playing in that new area?
I guess the point about Open RAN is that it sort of linked back to the active sharing question again. As we mentioned before, I think it's active sharing is something that is going on in the market. The issue is, but in particular, the constraint like in India, where you have limitations in terms of spectrum sharing, and so that is a fairly big issue. But then over time, as what you can see across the world, with the 5G deployment, what you see is that there isn't really enough spectrum for everybody, and therefore you need to start thinking about spectrum sharing and therefore active sharing, and that's something that would sort of go on. That would start to gain momentum over the next few years. With regards to Open RAN, I think that is something that has been pushed quite a bit, and it's something that would be quite positive for the tower operators to look at it, to start thinking about how they can implement the Open RAN. It's something that the mobile operators are still thinking, and I would say perhaps in the next year or so, you will see more developments in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then just one other area I want to cover, and maybe Chongwei or Alki, one of the two of you might want to take this, but is looking at the subject of edge computing, because I think that's coming up time and time again. And I think, there's a question of how far towards the edge does the edge need to be? What kind of signs have we got? Are towers going to be, what proportion of towers are going to be suitable sites? Is there space around? I mean, Alki, maybe from your side, is it something that you guys see as being a bit, a significant part, and you are anticipating, in the long run, there's going to be, edge computing happening at your sites, and that's something you're starting to prepare for now or think about practically now?
Yes, we are preparing for it. We are thinking through it, and there is a requirement of, edge computing in any case, when 5G comes in. As such, also densification is something which we are, focused on completely, even for 4G to kind of reach the levels of its potential, even before 5G comes in. When we talk about edge computing, it is, to my mind, also about getting more and more onto the, distributed sites, whether it is the computing power or the fiber nodes, etc. Now, that as a transport node or as a computing node is something which we can very, easily or smoothly provide, both in terms of setup times, of uptime, and of, general ease of operations. Now, these are the main key, offerings or value adds that we offer to the operators. Of course, besides sharing of any infrastructure that is, within our purview, and that goes like a, let's say, accepted value add from our side to the operators, and even operators, to their, credit, have been looking at us as partners for kind of rolling it out in a big way. Today, it is, let's say, initial few steps again for the edge computing to happen, and it's, as I repeat myself, it's not only about edge computing, it's also about making the nodes of transport closer to the edge, and not really taking the entire payload to the to whatever packet core they have set up. So more and more it is getting developed across the length and breadth, but for us to create this as a separate, let's say, business vertical, we have some time to go. Mm-hmm. Again, technically, it's not the issue. It has been already tried and it is rolling out. It is more a matter of how how their returns come in, how they plan their network, and then we are there to kind of put it up together for them.
I will agree on that. I think logically it makes sense because at the end of the day, the tower sites are likely to be sort of connected via fiber. So that helps in terms of it being a data center location. The other point is, of course, how much data is currently being required. I think once with IoT getting more acceptance, what you see is that there's more and more data at the edge, and that's where I think that the driver for edge computing will come in, that you actually don't really need the data to travel all the way to the core, and that it can potentially be processed at the edge. And in that circumstances is usually when IoT has already moved out quite a lot in terms of momentum. And so I would say IoT is actually quite a strong driver for edge computing going forwards.
Way. I wanted just to come back as one last question before we need to start to wrap things up, was actually coming back to you, Gulfraz. So I think we're talking here about the future of the towerco model, and we're talking about, what towercos are capable of getting into, and which way networks may be changing. But obviously, I think one of the most attractive things about towerco model for investors has been the returns and the margins. And obviously, these are all different areas which may have a sort of a different risk return profile. And so, I suppose just interested to see from your perspective, how people are viewing towercos as they start to sort of transform more into infracos. If that's something, I think, when we interview a lot of the kind of towercos, they want to kind of really underscore the fact that macro towers will remain the core part of their business, in terms of that's the messaging they're trying to put across to investors. Do you think that's something that's here to stay, and, ultimately they're not going to want to dilute it too much? Are you seeing investors really want to have that kind of core macro tower proposition and are less bothered about everything else? Or do they see that, this is the way that the market's going, and so are expecting to sort of be interested in companies like that?
Yeah, Laura, I think that's a great question. I think there are constraints for the publicly listed tower companies. I'll come on to those in a second. Where do I think this pans out? I think ultimately the tower companies need to provide a service to their clients, and they need to differentiate, and they need to provide the service that the clients need. And I think with the progression towards 5G, it only makes sense that fiber provision, particularly dark fiber, is shared. I think it only makes sense that where rural provision is more difficult for the operators, that the tower companies lead. Now, having said all of that, yes, there is certainly resistance, which I think really comes from the market, and operators are very cautious about talking up a lot of these services, not all of them, but take for example a tower company that is not just providing passive but is also providing active, right? And in that instance, the devil is in the detail, but let's assume that they also own the spectrum, right? And they need to then go through these same renewal cycles, technology risks that the MNOs are exposed to. That's not something that the towerco investors are comfortable with. There's a reason why towercos are valued where they're valued. It's because the towercos do not have the same risk profile as the MNOs. So the more you make a towerco look like the client, the more diluted the valuation will become. And that's why tower companies are treading very cautiously in this area. I think the same also applies, for example, to fiber, where fiber valuations are at a discount to where tower companies are trading. I think on that note, what needs to happen is the market needs to be a little bit more distinguishing of some of the characteristics. So you may have fiber ownership where there's multiple operators. That is not the same as a dedicated link from a particular tower to the transmission network, which is effectively an exclusive link. That, for my mind, once we do get more differentiation in terms of appreciation of these characteristics, investors will start to differentiate between those two areas. And I think the same will apply when it relates to edge computing centers. If that is a unique property, and there's the capability of sharing that will get a different value to if there isn't the sharing. And so the closer you are to the unique attributes that towercos, particularly macro sites, have today, the more inclined the tower companies will be to follow in that direction. And where the reverse is true, I think you will continue to meet resistance. And as a result, I think you'll also see a number of new operators coming into the space, as we saw, for example, in the DAS space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gulfraz. So we are just coming to time now, and Alka, there's a lot of things that you are working on that we haven't had chance to go through and speak about here, which is a shame. And I think actually those in their own right could really do with sort of separate discussions. I know you are running a roundtable coming up, which is actually looking at sort of, how power architecture is going to change around sort of 5G. And so I think that's an interesting one for people who are interested to hear what you guys are doing on that front. But I just wanted to kind of wrap up this panel to thank everybody who's joined and contributed to the session. I appreciate your time on that. And again, if anybody's got specific questions for everybody, I'm sure our panel will be happy to take some one-on-one questions via the networking app on the platform. So do reach out to them that way. But just want to thank everybody once again and thank everyone for listening. And we've got some roundtables starting in the next 5 minutes. So I'll let everybody get a break before going and joining those. So thanks so much.